you are currently paying a tax on an emotion you did not know was taxable. If you have ever stood in a jewelry store, feeling that cold sweat prickle your neck as you stare at a price tag equivalent to 4 months of rent or a used sedan, you are not just looking at a stone. You are looking at the most successful psychological operation in the history of commerce. In 2026, we accept the diamond engagement ring as a tradition as old as time, a biological mandate of romance. But your great-grandparents would have looked at that ring and seen exactly what it was: a massive, artificial surcharge on a common mineral. The 3-month salary rule is not an ancient custom. It is a marketing quota. You have been drafted into a century-long scheme designed to ensure that the most expensive thing you own outside of your home is an illiquid trap you can never, ever sell. Let us open the case file on the diamond standard and reveal the shadow behind the success. The story does not begin in a laboratory or a cathedral. It begins in a panic room. In the late 1800s, the diamond market faced a catastrophic problem. They found too many of them. In 1870, massive diamond pipes were discovered near the Orange River in South Africa. Suddenly, diamonds were not the rare playthings of the European elite. They were being pulled out of the dirt by the ton. Literally. The British financiers, led by the ruthless Cecil Rhodes, realized a fundamental truth of the Noir economy. Abundance is the enemy of profit. If the world realized that diamonds were as plentiful as garnets or topaz, the price would crater. The illusion of royalty would vanish, and the massive investments in South African soil would turn to dust. To save their margins, they had to kill the free market. In 1888, they formed De Beers Consolidated Mines, Limited. Their first move was not to sell diamonds. It was to own the ground they sat in. They did not just want a seat at the table. They wanted to own the room, the chairs, and the air you breathe while sitting in them. By the turn of the century, De Beers controlled 90% of the world's diamond production. But owning the supply was only half the battle. By the 1930s, the world was bleeding. The Great Depression had stripped the luxury out of life. In the aftermath of World War I, the young generation saw diamonds as an ostentatious relic of a dead era. Sales were plummeting. The warehouses in London were bulging with hundreds of thousands of carats. Enough stones to pave a highway. And no one was buying. New York, 1938. A conference room filled with cigarette smoke. A banker says the word surplus like it is a death sentence. Harry Oppenheimer, the corner genius and heir to the De Beers empire, is not looking for an ad agency. He is looking for a psychological mercenary. He finds N.W. Ayer and Son, the Madison Avenue firm that understood the dark art of the human ego. This was not a marketing pitch. It was the drafting of a financial weapon. The mandate was simple. Convince every man in America that his virility and success were directly proportional to the size of the rock he bought. Convince every woman that a proposal without a diamond was not just a disappointment. It was an insult. They did not just run ads. They rewrote the social contract. They sent lecturers to high schools to tell young girls that a diamond was the only acceptable symbol of love. They gave stones to Hollywood starlets to wear in the right scenes. They planted stories in newspapers about the tradition of the engagement ring. A tradition they had literally just typed into existence on a Remington typewriter 3 weeks prior. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Control the supply. Make sure no one else can dig them up. Manufacture the need. Link the stone to the most powerful human emotions: love, status, and the fear of inadequacy. Lock the exit. Convince the buyer that a diamond is forever, so they never try to sell it back. You are not wearing a piece of history. You are wearing a cold, calculated ledger entry from 1938. To understand how you were robbed, you have to stop looking at the jewelry store window and start looking at a nondescript building at 2 Charterhouse Street, London. This was the headquarters of the Central Selling Organization, the cold, beating heart of the De Beers cartel. For most of the 20th century, the diamond market was not a market at all. It was a closed-circuit radiator. In a normal capitalist system, if a company finds a mountain of gold, the price of gold drops. But De Beers realized that if the price of diamonds ever dropped, the dream would evaporate. So, they built a dam. They did not just mine the stones. They hoarded them. De Beers stockpiled over $5 billion worth of diamonds by mid-century estimates. They sat on reserves so massive that if they had released them all at once, diamonds would have the resale value of a handful of gravel. The mechanism of this monopoly was a masterpiece of clinical intimidation, known as the single channel. It worked through a ritual called the sight. 10 times a year, De Beers invited a hand-picked group of about 80 diamond wholesalers, the sight holders, to London. These men were the elite of the earth, yet they were treated like supplicants. Picture the room. A sight holder opens a little yellow cardboard box. Inside is a mix of high-grade gems and utter garbage. The price is $5 million. Take it, and you survive to sell another day. Complain about the garbage, and your family's diamond business, built over 3 generations, is blacklisted by lunch. There was no haggling. It was extortion in a tailored suit. If you tried to buy diamonds from a rogue mine in Russia or Australia, you were cut off forever. The cartel controlled up to 90% of global supply flow. Not production. Flow. They controlled the aperture, making the world believe diamonds were vanishingly rare, even as their vaults groaned under the weight of millions of carats. But a bottleneck in supply is useless if there is no demand. That is where the N.W. Ayer propaganda plan of 1938 comes in. The smoking gun of this entire heist. The agency did not just sell a product. They engineered a social reflex. In their internal memos, which read more like a psychological warfare manual than a marketing brief, they stated their goal clearly: to create a situation where almost every person pledging marriage feels levied a diamond. Note the word levied, like a tax. The agency launched a three-pronged assault on the human ego. First, the Hollywood injection. They did not buy billboard space. They bought the culture. They ensured that every leading lady in a 1940s film gasped at the sight of a diamond. They pressured fashion designers to talk about the trend of diamonds in interviews. They made the stone synonymous with the happily ever after that every American post-war household was desperate to believe in. Second, the mandatory math. In the early 1940s, they began seeding the idea that a man should spend 1 month's salary on a ring. By the 1980s, through sheer repetitive force, they inflated that tradition to 2 months. Today, you will hear 3. There is no biological or historical basis for this. It is a mathematical formula designed by an accountant in a skyscraper to ensure the maximum extraction of your wealth. Third, the psychological lock. This was the masterstroke. In 1947, an NWA copywriter named Francis Scarcity scribbled 4 words on a piece of paper before bed. A diamond is forever. On the surface, it is a romantic sentiment. In the ledger of the cartel, it is a security measure. If a diamond is forever, you can never sell it. And if you never sell it, you never realize that its resale value is a fraction of what you paid. By linking the stone to the eternal soul of a marriage, De Beers ensured that the secondary market remained dead. They turned a commodity into a sentimental heirloom, effectively removing billions of carats from the global supply permanently. Imagine if Ford sold you a car, but convinced you that selling it or trading it in was a betrayal of your family's honor. You would be stuck with a driveway full of depreciating steel, and Ford would never have to worry about used cars competing with their new models. That is exactly what happened to you. The sheer scale of the market capture is staggering. In the 1950s, when massive diamond deposits were discovered in Siberia, De Beers did not panic. They simply invited the Soviet Union into the cartel. The capitalist titans of London and the communist masters of Moscow shook hands in the dark to ensure that you, the consumer, kept paying a 1,000% markup on a stone that was being pulled out of the Siberian permafrost by the ton. They were not just selling jewelry. They were managing a global hallucination. They had to keep the illusion of manufactured scarcity alive, because the moment you stop believing a diamond is rare, it becomes what it actually is. A very hard, very shiny piece of carbon that the Earth produces in staggering abundance. You were told you were buying a rock that symbolized your future. In reality, you were paying the operating costs of a global bottleneck, funding a London vault designed to keep you from ever knowing the true price of forever. The ledger finally balances, and the math is brutal. If you want to see the ghost of the De Beers cartel, do not look at the jewelry store. Look at a pawn shop window or a local We Buy Gold storefront. Walk inside with that $5,000 investment you bought 2 years ago. Watch the jeweler's face. He will not see a forever symbol. He will see a commodity with a resale value that would make a used car salesman blush. In 1982, investigative journalist Edward J. Epstein published a landmark exposé titled, "Have You Ever Tried to Sell a Diamond?" He confirmed what the industry had known for decades. The retail markup on a diamond ranges from 100% to 300% depending on cut and clarity. But the liquidity, your ability to turn that stone back into cash, is virtually non-existent. The moment you walk out of that store, your precious asset loses roughly 50% of its value. Why? Because you are not a member of the cartel. You cannot sell to the site holders. You are at the bottom of a food chain, designed to only move in one direction, away from your bank account. This is the fallout of synthesized romance. We have been conditioned to believe that a diamond is a store of value, a safety net for a young couple. In reality, it is a sunk cost fallacy. It is a literal dead weight in your portfolio. While your grandfather might have been told he was buying security, he was actually paying a massive, non-refundable entry fee into a social club that De Beers invented in a boardroom. Even today, as the cartel's grip weakens, the shadow remains. In the last decade, the rise of lab-grown diamonds, stones that are chemically, physically, and optically identical to mined ones, should have crashed the market. For the first time in history, the scarcity is provably a lie. You can grow a perfect 3-carat stone in a lab for a fraction of the cost of digging it out of the earth. And yet, the ghost of the NWA propaganda still whispers in our ears. We find ourselves asking, but is it real? We have been so thoroughly programmed to value the struggle of the earth and the prestige of the cartel premium that we reject the logical choice. We would rather go into 5-figure debt for a natural stone than admit that the tradition we are upholding was a 20th century invention. De Beers did not just invent the diamond ring. They wrote the source code for modern artificial scarcity. It is the exact same playbook used in 2026. The cartel evolved. Today, that same psychological operation is used to sell you digital assets with no cash flow, watches with waiting lists longer than supply chains, and luxury real estate priced on fear, not fundamentals. Create a bottleneck, control the supply, and convince the consumer that paying a 1,000% markup is a privilege. So, before you sign that credit card slip or drain your savings for a sparkling rock, ask yourself this: are you buying a symbol of your future Or are you just paying a century-old debt to a group of men in a London vault? Who convinced you that your heart has a minimum spending requirement? When you buy a mined diamond today, you are not proving your love. You are volunteering to be the ultimate bag holder for a 19th-century British cartel. The engagement ring is arguably the most successful scam in human history. A completely illiquid asset, backed by absolutely nothing, but a marketing slogan from 1947. If you want to invest in your marriage, buy an index fund. In the end, the diamond is not the most durable thing in that ring. The most durable thing is the lie. Because in the ledger of history, every debt must eventually be paid.